On the 8th of February 2023, the second official trailer for the upcoming Tears of the Kingdom was shared by Nintendo at the end of their Nintendo Direct. With just 3 months to go until the launch, so far we have been treated to a teaser trailer which lasted 1 minute 37 in length in 2020, a follow-up trailer at E3 2021 which came in at 1 minute 39 seconds, and the first official trailer at 1 minute 37 seconds. Up until now we've had no more than 4 minutes 44 seconds of footage to pick bones out of, but now we have an extra 2 minutes 19 to analyse, along with the footage that we've already had time to digest. Today we'll take a break from Skyward Sword and take a look at the footage we have, diving deep into what we can hope to expect from May 12th's Tears of the Kingdom. At the intro we have what looks like a Zonai swirl, an angry volcano and forked lightning. This could be a possible indication of 3 areas we could be to visit, the volcano being an obvious nod to Eldin as an area. The forked lightning could be a dungeon within the sky, possibly inside of a location like the Thunderhead, possibly the Isle of Songs. The Zonai swirl is most confusing, but the imagery of the green, red and yellow on the black backdrop is almost too strong to ignore. We're next treated to new enemies. Large, yellow-winged creatures with an antenna, giving it a bug-like appearance, with arms that form 2 large wings, atop of a body that reminisces an amphibian. In appearance these remind me a little of Gecko from Majora's Mask. Finally, they have a forked dragon's tail. These look like they could be an upgrade to the Keese, and I would imagine that these are a variant, and we will likely see normal, fire and ice versions of these also. 2 towers are lit up like Christmas trees as we see a strange yellow marking in the mountainside. These markings seem to be everywhere in this trailer, and clearly make a large part of whatever the main quest is within the game. I see us having to go to these areas, but to do what right now is an absolute mystery. Next up is the underside of an island, which is suspended in the air. The same one presumably Link jumps from in the official trailer number 1. The rock face on the island is filled with markings, and lots of blue particles fill the air. The blue particles seem to resemble souls of some format, as we see from King Roan, who is surrounded by the same blue particles when we meet him in Breath of the Wild. The markings on the rock face could well be Sheikah markings, as blue is often indicated a Sheikah presence. We then circle around the Bokoblin and Lizalfos encampment, where the Bokoblin are actually seen crafting something out of the rock, or potentially mining. This rock is covered in swirls and patterns. I don't have any significance for these markings, but imagine as if time goes on, encampments are made by monsters. This would change the way the world would be explored, as it would start empty but nearing the end would fill with monster encampments. We next see a bridge connecting us to what seems to be Hyrule Castle, which is encompassed by a ring of malice. In the backdrop we once again have Death Mountain, and it appears to be erupting, spewing malice from the crater. But on the bridge there is a 3-headed dragon, with all of its heads on fire. I said in my Monsters Returning video, and we have proof here, that Gleeok or Staldra are returning to Zelda, and will be in Tears of the Kingdom. Hateno Village is now shown, with a heavy emphasis on the labs where Purah does her work. What's interesting here though is a green and blue spiral that sits where just a tree sat in Breath of the Wild. It's an unremarkable location, which indicates that we will see areas change even if only by small amounts in the next installment of the series. We've seen green energy everywhere, but this is the second time in this trailer alone now that we've seen blue energy. And again, it seems to be that these swirls pop up in various locations. I would guess that they're a new version of shrines. The green on the swirls is a colour that seems to indicate the Zonai, and also green has always been the representation of courage within the Zelda series. Blue indicates wisdom within the Zelda games, and can well be something to do with the Sheikah. Perhaps we will come to understand more through the completing of these trials just what the Sheikah and Zonai truly have in common. The Blood Moon is back! I think we were all worried that this mechanic would disappear from Tears of the Kingdom, as it was one of the better parts of the game within Breath of the Wild. But now it seems like we could be perpetually in a state of heightened monster strength. The pattern here on Link's shield is interesting, as it looks like a Sheikah eye emblazoned into the middle of it, while at the bottom are a series of gold and silver triangles, but not together, but rather apart and in a line. This is probably just equipment design, but triangles, like circles, are eternal. They continue to be triangles no matter what, but if you rearrange the triangles in a line from the Triforce, that eternity is broken. Perhaps this is symbolism for the Triforce to be broken completely, and the eternal loop of the Zelda series coming to an end. My prediction for the game is not a Zelda or a Link death, but the end of the Triforce as we know it. During this segment of the trailer, we finally hear the voice of Ganondorf, and my goodness is he menacing.
Rise, rise my servants. Sweep over Hyrule, eliminate this kingdom and her allies. Leave no survivors!
He seems to pen an angry letter to his army, a war cry that tells them to rise. He goes on to tell his servants to again sweep over Hyrule. The next line is interesting though.
Eliminate this kingdom and her allies.
Does this infer the other areas from Hyrule that may help the cause in this game, or was it just said for dramatic effect? Does this mean that he will aim to eradicate the Zora, the Rito, and the Goron, or does it mean that we have other areas outside of Hyrule that may well aid Hyrule in its plight? How awesome would it be to see some other kingdoms help out, or even cross over in downloadable content? Maybe we could get a return to Termina for just a brief period. He finally leaves the instruction to leave no survivors, before firing what seems to be malice missiles from the moon itself, which leave a wake of destruction as a part of Hyrule Castle crumbles upon the impact. There is so much to unpack in just these few seconds. First of all, we knew that the Blood Moon was the time where evil was at its peak, but never once did I think that the moon would be a central evil location again in the Zelda universe. The last time we had this was in Majora's Mask, which imposed a 3-day limit on us, before we would have to turn back time and start all over again. This I do not see being the case, as it would be way too limited as a gameplay mechanic for a game this size and scope, but the moon being so central instead of an ancillary bit part mechanic is definitely something I'm up for. It would appear as though when the Malice missiles hit, they either cause mass destruction, or if they strike an enemy, the enemy powers up dramatically. We see some bokoblins with unicorn horns get struck directly, and they appear to morph, though the next shot then is of much stronger enemies such as Lizarfoss, Hinox, and Moblin. The inference here is that the magic changes the enemies entirely. This could be an interesting mechanic for when a Blood Moon appears, as basic enemies could suddenly become absolute menaces. We're riding on a horse next, and finally we get to see some sweet gameplay. We've got a visual on the castle again, which is definitely the main central point of the game. In the sky here we have a large swirling cone of clouds, which looks suspiciously like something we've seen in the first part of this Zelda trilogy. This could be something I alluded to earlier on, the Thunderhead. We see more destruction again, and a new chasm having been opened up by the missiles. This seems to be how they're getting around the map having changed, which is a good thing. I was worried that we'd be getting exactly the same map again, so to know that there are changes incoming to that is great. Link is on a platform next with 6 mechanical arms surrounding him, coming through the floor. These look a little familiar, as they look just like guardian legs, and they could well be threatening as they enclose around him. On the ground that he stands on is a Sheikah Eye, glowing blue. Similar to the swirls that we've seen earlier, it's clear that these portals or swirls are controlled by the Sheikah, Zonai, or a mix of the both. We're back at war again as a pack of black bokoblins and moblins stampede in, and a Hinox chases Link through a tight tunnel. Again, during my Which Monsters Should Return video, I said that it would be cool to have something like a Moldarak style monster chase you through tight corridors underground. And here we are, being chased by a giant monster through tight corridors. Now don't get me wrong, it's not quite a giant scorpion, but I'll give myself half a point for this one. There's a green glowing gem around this dude's neck, which I'm super interested in. It glows with a green energy. If Malice is purple and Sheikah are blue and Zonai are green, is this crystal giving the Hinox extra power? And if so, are the Zonai actually evil? Or alternatively, knowing what we know about Hinoxes already from Breath of the Wild, and that is that they often have items around their neck, is this something that's been stolen by the monster encampment? Maybe this is why we have both blue and green swirls. Maybe they're areas of conflict between the Zonai and the Sheikah. Now we've got our wide angle lens on again, and we see a gorgeous landscape with mountains, floating islands, a tower of sorts. But I'm going to be critical here. All of these islands look exactly the same. They are round with a flat piece to stand on. The landforms all reach downwards, pointing towards the earth below. They're like earthly stalactites. Link grabs his trusty paraglider, and it looks like that will return for at least the first portion of the game, and descends down to the ground below. More horsey riding up next, and we see one of those flying enemies from earlier literally airdrop a bokoblin on top of Link. This is so freaking cool. What a great idea for enemy respawn and a way to make a situation more difficult. This is a really cool idea, and I love seeing enemies interact with one another in games, and this just ticks a lot of boxes. We're fighting Moblin now, and we get to see the combat for the very first time. And then we quickly cut to a giant stone golem attacking Link. These golems are made up of a series of cubes stacked on top of each other. Nintendo have absolutely loved this design lately, even going so far as to create a Pokemon that is made up of a similar structure, Knucklestack. These lumps of rock are bound by magic, which is flowing through a green swirled lettering across their bodies. This is definitely controlled by Zonai magic, and seems to be confirming further and further that Zonai in fact are not good, but rather a force of evil. This would indicate that the hand that holds Ganondorf into the sealed grounds was not sealing him, but rather preserving his corpse until he could gain enough power to retake the lands of Hyrule. The voice of Ganondorf earlier sounds like a fully fleshed out man, not a skeleton, so you have to presume that he regains his full flesh bodily form. I think we can see this every time Link kills an enemy, then Malice returns to the moon and therefore powers Ganondorf. Could you imagine the implication here, as you gather your powers and find the Tears of the Kingdom, but do so by defeating as few enemies as possible in order to not power the final boss of the game? That would be a crazy mechanic, but something I'd definitely be down for. Ganondorf now stands, arms raised to the sky while he stands on a stone swirl, not too dissimilar from Zonai patterns laid on the floor, before we get our jump scare on, and now seen upside down Ganondorf, his eyes open and red with rage. Zelda's voice echoes over an image of Link, with his best determined face on, and she has doubt in her voice.
But Link, I am not sure you'll be able to stop him,
she states, as he looks on into the distance. Looking at Link's attire here, it looks as if we have the old blue hero garb back from Breath of the Wild, but it's enhanced by a fabric and leather cape of sorts, similar to that worn by the King of Hyrule, King Rome, in the original Switch Zelda game. We then go skydiving, and it's always these shots that most interest me because it's fun to see what we can see in the distance, and well, we get to play Zelda I Spy. Again, a mountain of sorts is emphasised, and something is glowing in the background, presumably a tower if earlier on in the trailer was anything to go by. As Link is then seen running on the top of a cliff, we see a few interesting things in the background. First of all, there's a marking left on the floor of the lands, only visible from high up. This marking seems to show an elephant, and to be precise, it seems to be showing Van Ruta, the Divine Beast. It would seem as if we're not done with the Divine Beast in this game, and perhaps we need to potentially unearth them once again. We see a tower off to the left, and towards the front of the shop we see a building that looks like a shell of sorts. A cleverly crafted, large bokoblin base, indicating that some of these structures with monsters in will be quite large. Next up, we're fighting again, and that bat, bird, bug, toad thing are back. We have an arrow knocked that when fired seems to home in on an enemy, which I presume is something we'll get a little later on into the game, as I wouldn't imagine they'll take the fun away from manual aiming to begin with. We're now sliding down train tracks to a hillside enemy base via shield surfing. Lots of cuts have been run off the route here, but there's not a massive amount to unpack from this area, despite there being a pretty large boulder with a giant red line running through it, which looks like a perfect target for a bomb. I think we can confirm here that bombs are of course back in Tears of the Kingdom, but I imagine they'll be one of the powers bestowed upon Link with his new arm, although I would absolutely love to see different types of bombs make an appearance. Link is next seen rotating an axis with a blue or chica version of what seems to be magnesis. The axis controls the platform in front of him, and as the axis is rotated, so does the platform. This I feel will lead to some pretty cool puzzles. The action is non-stop in this trailer, as now we're deep underground and in a cavern with stalagmites protruding from the ceiling. There's a blue substance that seems to have clung its way onto a Hinox here. There's also blue substances hanging from the walls, and I think these look suspiciously like choo-choos. Link is seen doing a front flip with a two-handed giant weapon of some sort that appears to fire energy from it. This is not a typical Zelda weapon, and it seems to be relatively new. It gives me almost Seed Shooter vibes from Oracle of Ages. With this, he blows up the rock that's in its way before we cut to Princess Zelda in her traditional garb. At least, it looks like her. But then she extends a hand to a blackened hand that we've seen many times in these 4 trailers we've received so far. Link's new powered arm. Link clenches his fist, more in fascination at his new hand, before unleashing a spell onto the water that wrenches up a tire from the lake. This is a different form of magnesis that doesn't seem to require metallic objects. It would then appear as if Link has taken this tire, some wood, and some more equipment that he's found on his travels and made himself a car? This mechanic is going to be a lot of fun, as we seemingly get to make mounts out of the stuff we find in the world. For about 2 seconds we see a hot air balloon flying through the sky near some clouds that seem to be reminiscing ancient lettering. Once again we have the erupting Death Mountain in view. The more we see this area, the more I seem to think it's going to be very important in the game. It seems to hold a lot of significance in every trailer. Link is now on a custom-made aircraft, riding a board that's sandwiched between 4 fan blades as he rides through the sky aisles. It looks like we're going to be making cars and aircraft, which is a super cool idea. More horsey riding next, although I do wonder if that will become redundant later on in the game as we unlock the ability to make mounts. And as Link approaches what seems to be an abandoned enemy camp, a rock covered in blue energy seems to fall from the sky. Here we can see the scope of the Sky Islands too. They're going to be located all over the map, so there's going to be plenty for us to explore in May. We're then shown the logo once again, with an odd noise in the background. It's almost mechanical, but it seems to hold a tune, as it were. I may be corrected, but I don't think we've heard this noise before, but I do believe that this noise is associated with the Zonai. As we come away from the logo, Link is attacked by a giant tentacle of pure malice, which forces Link to make a choice. He can either stand his ground and be damaged heavily by the malice, or jump. He jumps, and it's revealed that he leapt in after Princess Zelda as she plunged into the hole during an earlier trailer. With that comes the end of the trailer, and once again the release date of May 12th is shown to us. With what we've seen, this trailer seems to ask more questions than it answers, though it would seem that we potentially have an interesting situation between 2 magical forces, the Sheikah and the Zonai, with the Zonai seeming to help evil while the Sheikah fight on the side of the hero. It would seem as if Zelda at some stage within the story regains her full status as Hylia, as she dons the traditional clothing of Princess Zelda, and she seems to do a little bit of a deal with something which looks an awful lot like the new arm that Link has upon his body. We see that this arm during the trailer seems to have a massive effect on him, as it's not just impacting his arm anymore but across his shoulder, and chest also. What we don't know is that whether this is actually Zelda or whether it's another Princess Zelda. After all, time travel in this series is quite commonplace, or whether it's someone completely different, i.e. the goddess Hylia. Perhaps we will get a link with the Ocarina of Time in this game, as the dress this princess wears is very reminiscent of the old dress that the princess wore as a child within Ocarina of Time. What this link is though is tenuous at best, but the dress style of the princess cannot be looked past here, as it will certainly appear as though the Princess of Time has some significance in this story. One thing we can say with absolute certainty is that this game will be a lot darker than most of the entries into the series, with the emphasis being the destruction of Hyrule by Ganondorf's forces, which is something that is definitely welcomed by all fans of the series. There are still no signs of dungeons in the game, and judging by the swirls of energy that seem to represent shrines and the etchings of divine beasts littered on the floors of certain areas in the game, I would imagine that we would unfortunately have another Zelda game with no major dungeons. But perhaps these etchings can lead to dungeon-like structures. It does appear though as if we'll be heading finally in a Zelda game into multiple terrains, underground, into the sky and on the surface, which will vastly improve the amount of gameplay styles. This is also a heavily welcome addition. All in all, this was a really juicy trailer, and one that should keep us all excited until the next trailer drop, and hopefully Nintendo will give us a dedicated Zelda Direct sometime in the build-up to the launch on May 12th. Thank you so much for watching this video today. If you're as hyped about Tears of the Kingdom as I am, please drop a comment down below, and subscribe for more content about Tears of the Kingdom and Zelda theories. Thank you. Bye!